Hello everyone, my name's Nisha and I am the YogicAmnesiac. I was going to film a routine originally today, but I changed my mind, partially because I really need this time to get back into my own practice. If you guys have been following me on Instagram, I've been trying to post about getting back into my practice every day and all sorts of things like that, so you can go check that out if you'd like. I'll put my Instagram down in the description below, or maybe even on the screen somewhere. And you also might know that I had a big dance performance and I ended up hurting myself a bunch. For some reason I was feeling fine, and then on the last day of the dance performance my entire right leg was hurting. So I'm not gonna film a yoga routine for you today, obviously, because we're here. So instead, I decided I'd do an equally important video about consent. That's actually another big reason. I thought, oh, well, I could do a really simple practice about getting back into yoga, but I thought it would be more important instead to talk about consent, because I know we've touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to give it its own video and its own blog post. So if you'd like to read more about it, you can check my blog out as well. And yeah, let's get started talking about this very important issue to the yoga community and the world as a whole. For me, the easiest way I find to explain consent is to say yes means yes and everything else means no. And by that I mean yes as in an enthusiastic yes. You usually hear people talk about consent in things like having sex or, you know, anything intimate, and they say enthusiastic consent is like a yes, like an absolutely yes. And we take that very seriously in yoga as well. Outside of the yoga community, there can be kind of weird situations where no does not mean no, but that's something that you've talked about beforehand, and that's why you have things like safe words. And if you are really worried about your yoga practice, you can always incorporate safe words into that as well. However, because we are just doing yoga or exercise, safe words usually consist of things like stop, no, ouch, this hurts, this is uncomfortable. Anything negative, we will help you out and stop doing whatever we're doing. Consent is something I take very seriously, and every studio and instructor you meet will take it seriously as well. Usually they'll try to ask you before they touch you if they can, you know, have consent and things like that. Sometimes they forget and it's an honest mistake, but that is something to look out for in an instructor, is if they routinely are, you know, touching people who they don't know very well or all sorts of things and not getting consent or never asking that person for consent. It's a really big deal to me, and that's a huge red flag. If a person is entering your space or, you know, actually physically touching your body without you saying that you can touch my body. So I kind of broke consent into 3 different categories. The first one is an unspoken consent, which is not really something I like to consider consent, only because I like consent to mean a definite verbal confirmation of some sort, or a definite confirmation where you know that this person has said yes. But this is kind of consent. You walk into a studio and a teacher lets you stay there and you are letting them be their teacher. That's technically a form of consent, and you don't have to say, yes, you can be my teacher at the beginning, but it's important and they do have the right to kick you out and you have the right to leave. I call this simple unspoken consent because it's kind of a given that they are letting you into their class and that you're letting them teach you. They don't need to tell you that every single time, that yes, it is okay for you to be in here, and you don't have to say, yes, it's okay for you to teach me. Another type of consent, which I think is the most important, or one of the most important at least, is spoken consent. I also sometimes call this spoken required consent, and that's situations when someone is touching your body or entering your space. This has to do with anything from, you know, helping you get into a pose more, or, you know, touching your shoulders to help you relax if you're in Shavasana, or even coming onto your mat or anything like that. Sometimes those all require consent, especially if you're new to the class and don't know the instructor very well. This is the type of consent that we really go on and on about every single class whenever we touch someone. That's why we're asking, is because we want your consent to touch you. The third is informed consent, and that of course is a legal document that you usually sign before class, which relieves yoga instructors and studios of undue lawsuits and things like that, and it tells you that you are in charge of your own health, safety, and body. This informed consent is you consenting to take the class, which in a way, I guess that conflicts with my first point, saying that you are letting the teacher teach you, but you're consenting to take a class with the knowledge that you could be injured. These consent forms also tell you more that you need to look out for yourself. We're going to try not to hurt you and do our best, and we'll try to help you as best we can, but at the end of the day, it's your job to make sure your body is not screaming at you and you're not in pain. So all these types of consent and various forms that you can get consent in are all great, but there's more to it and there's actually reasons why it's important. In yoga, you can feel very vulnerable. We try to create spaces where, in fact, you do feel a little bit vulnerable and very open. It's not to make you feel weak or susceptible, but it's to make you feel more open and eventually relaxed and comfortable with yourself. But vulnerability opens you up to a lot of things, and we want to know that you're okay with doing this and opening up like that. The other thing consent does, and this is in any situation that requires consent, is it's telling you that your body is your own. And that's the biggest point of consent. At the end of the day, everything about you, like your own person, your body, your thoughts, everything about you is your own to control. It's not ours, which is why we ask for consent. Because we want to know that we're allowed to touch your body or to do something with you. Consent also helps us know that you feel safe and comfortable. If you say yes, we know that you feel comfortable with us, and if you say no, then we know that you are comfortable so long as we don't touch you, or if we're not touching you, that helps you feel more comfortable. So it's important to us to know your comfort level. Also, and just like any situation where you give consent, just because you've said yes does not mean you cannot back out later. You have the right to protect your own body and all sorts of things, so you are able to revoke that consent at any time. I say that you have the right to stop and protect yourself, and this is protecting yourself from injury or from people. So if you're in a pose and we offer to adjust you, maybe you literally know you can't go any farther. Tell us that and we won't adjust you. No harm done, right? The other option is that maybe you're not 100% comfortable with your instructor yet, you're new to the class, new to the studio, and you just don't want them touching you yet. And that's fine as well. We just want to make sure that you're safe, you're doing well, and honestly, if we're ever offering to adjust you, it's just an offer, and you always have the right to say no. At the end of the day, no matter what you're doing, consent is insanely important, and that's really why I wanted to talk about it. I think it's something that we should constantly be talking about. It should be out in the open, and it's applicable to pretty much every single aspect of your life. So if you guys have any more questions or comments about consent, please leave a comment down below. I love reading them, and I'll be happy to get back to you about all sorts of things that involve consent or anything in general if you just like to say hello. Don't forget to like this video, especially if you like consent and informed consent and all sorts of those good things. And finally, don't forget to subscribe. It's the best way for YouTube to let you know if I've released any new videos.